Hi, it's Dana, and I thought I'd introduce you today to PowerPivot. Now, in another tutorial, I introduced you to Microsoft's pivot table feature, which is probably the most common topic I teach in level 2. But the reason for PowerPivot is when they give you the pivot table in 2007, they gave you over a million rows. So if I just go down here really quickly, there's 1,048,576 rows in one worksheet. Well, if you're using even half of that, when you create a pivot table, it's going to use a lot of memory and it's going to run pretty slow. So if you are trying to create pivot tables to summarize much longer lists than I have here, then you would want to use PowerPivot. Also, if you want to pull directly from the source and you don't want to have to load it in to Excel because you have more than a million rows of data in your data source, so you can't dump it into Excel, that would be the reason to really use PowerPoint. So it's really or not PowerPoint, PowerPivot. It's really just a speed and processing thing is why you want to use it, and all kinds of other things as well, but those are the two main things. All right, so what I want to do is show you how to create a PowerPivot and how it's a little different. All right, so the first thing I have to do is I do have to have my Excel information in table format. So I'm going to go ahead and convert it. And if you don't know how to do this, I did a 5-minute tutorial on that. Just go to my YouTube channel and you can find that. But I'm going to click inside my list, hit table, convert this list to a table, and then I should give this a good name. So I'm going to come up here and call this table authors up here on the top. Can't have a space, so that's a good name for it. All right, now what I want to do is I want to create a pivot table, but I also want to pull in from another larger data source, and I don't actually want to pull into Excel, I just want to connect to it. So I'm going to go ahead and create my first PowerPivot. So I'm going to take the list that we're in, and I'm going to add that to my data model, and this right now is launching into PowerPivot, which is a different screen. And right now it's loading this in and compressing it, using those algorithms, making sure it's smaller. But here's brought in all of my data. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to take a look at is I want to pull another data set in from somewhere else. So if you say from database, you can link directly to Microsoft's application. You can come from a data source or data service, or from any of these other sources. And I'll just scroll through them so you can see where they're coming from. So you can pretty much pull in from anything, and if all else fails, pull it in as a text file. Now again, those files that you're connecting to right here can be over a million rows because you don't have to pull it into Excel first. All right, I'm going to go ahead, and what I want to pull from is just an Access database. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to pull from Access. I'm going to browse and find that Access database. If I had a username and password, I would put it in. I do not. It's going to give me a list of all my tables and queries that I have in that Access database. I'm going to go ahead and choose the table that I'm looking to bring in. And right now I'm bringing this into my data model. Again, this did not take very long because I only have 434 rows, but imagine you had 4,034,000 rows. I mean, it would come in a lot. You would see the time right here because it's actually going to compress and bring that in. But then once it brings it in, it'll run a lot more efficiently. All right, so I have that. I'm going to go ahead and close. It's going to be a separate tab down here. So I have my authors right now. There we go. I have my authors right now, and I have my book sales, and this is linked directly to the Access database. All right, so what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to relate the two. So this column called author in my Access database is going to link to this author ID field here that I had in Excel. So I'm just going to quickly go to diagram view and see if it connected them for me. And it did not. And the reason that Microsoft did not connect them is over here it's called author ID, over here it's called author. So it doesn't have the same name, so it's not guessing. But I'm going to go ahead and link them. Voila, they're now linked author ID to author. That's a VLOOKUP, essentially. All right, coming back to my data view up here at the top. All right, now I have my two tables pulled from two various different sources, and I'm ready to create a pivot table. So I'm going to come on up here to the pivot table. PowerPivot is more akin to your Tableau or your Kronos, so you have all these options to create dashboards and do a little bit more. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to quickly create a pivot table, and it throws me back into Excel. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new sheet here, and I'm ready to create my pivot. So here's my authors, which is my first table of data, and that's in Excel, versus this one is pulling right from the Access database. All right, I'm just going to quickly pull one field from each of these to go ahead and create a pivot table. All right, then you can do anything you would normally do with a pivot table because you're in your pivot table view. So anything you want to do up here, you could do. I could have created the relationship here as well between those two tables should I chose to do there. That I can change the formatting, all of that stuff. All right, I'm going to quickly just sort this to see who my top customer is, or top author is, and there it is. There's their ID. All right, so I just wanted to quickly show you that PowerPivot, again, the reason for this, and let me go ahead and switch back over to it, is it allows you to grab sets that are larger than 1,000,000 rows of data. It also compresses your data, so it'll be a lot more efficient. And we didn't talk about this, but if you create your calculations using PowerPivot, the calculations that you create can be just on your filtered data. So if you're filtering this, and you have a calculation rather than having to do the calculation for every single author, it can just do them for the authors that you're showing. So if you were just showing a handful of authors, let me just go ahead and pick two, I could use a formula called calculate that would just do the math on that. So it's not going to take a lot of time or processing speed as well. All right, so PowerPivot, it is to kind of combat those other programs that are out there as well. There's also a suite of Power tools called Power BI that Microsoft has as well. But I hope you enjoyed this 5-minute tour of PowerPivot. Again, you will have PowerPivot if you have Excel 2016 or Excel 2019. If you have Excel 2010 or Excel 2013, you will need to download it as an add-in. So it's available, you just have to download it. So again, PowerPivot, download it. And in 2019, I had to activate mine too. So what I did is I just quickly came up here and said PowerPivot, you know, that kind of thing. And it found it for me and said enable. So have a great day.